All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kristen Mackey, and I'm the Community Relations and Outreach Program Manager for WA Cares Fund. We are looking forward to a great conversation today about the next generation of caregivers. I am very pleased to have a fantastic panel joining me to talk about their experience and their work in this area. So we're going to get started with some brief introductions and talk about why we're here. And then each panelist will have some time to give an overview of the work that they do. We'll also have a brief overview of WA Cares, Washington State's new universal long-term care insurance program, and how it will help address some of the issues that we're talking about. And then we will open up for discussion and audience Q&A. For those of you who joined on a computer, you can submit a question for our panel through the Q&A function on Zoom. And feel free to start getting your questions in now, and then we will answer them once we reach that section of the agenda. We also often get questions about whether our presentation will be available, and we will have both the recording of this webinar and the presentation slides available on our website after the webinar is over. So we'll go ahead and start with introductions. And Susan, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Susan Ingalls. I'm an office chief with Home and Community Services, which is part of Aging and Long-Term Support Administration, DSHS, and we work with family caregivers in my unit.
Fantastic. Christine.
Christine Morris. I'm also an office chief in the Aging and Long-Term Support Administration for Home and Community Services, and my unit does training, communications, and workforce development.
Great. And Danny.
Hi, I am Danny Rice, and I am a caregiver from Washington State. I am an IP.
All right, great. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and start out with a quick poll. If those of you who are on a computer, who've joined through a computer, can take a quick minute to fill out your answers to that. That would help us tailor our conversation today. Just a couple of quick questions. And while you fill that out, I am just going to go through some quick slides, a quick overview of why we're here and some of the basics. So first of all, I think it's helpful for us to make sure that we're on the same page about what we're talking about here. When we talk about both long-term care and caregiving, we're talking about help with activities of daily living, like bathing, eating, dressing, and taking medication. So that can look like a few different things. That can be paid care from a professional, or in many cases, it's informal unpaid care from a family member, a friend, or a neighbor. And that can happen in your own home or at a facility like a nursing home in a wide range of settings. And this is important because our population is aging really rapidly, and about 70% of us will need long-term care at some point in our lives. So you can see this is the increase in population relative to 2012, and it goes from 2012 to 2060. You can see that blue line is the population 85 and older, and yellow is 75 to 84. And those encompass some of our highest risk years for needing long-term care. And you can see the steepness of those curves. And what that means is that families are increasingly unable to meet the demand for long-term care. And the number of potential family caregivers for each person who needs care is declining really rapidly. From in 2010, 7 people who could be a family caregiver for every person who needs care, to 4 in 2030 and down to only 3 in 2050. So that means increased pressure and increased need for support for those family caregivers, as well as a need to bolster our professional caregiving workforce in order to meet demands. And I am going to go ahead and share the results of that poll. So everyone should be able to see that. We've got a lot of folks, looks like about 50% who work in long-term care or a related field. About 20% have provided unpaid care. And then about 30% who either don't have direct experience, but either know a lot or maybe aren't super familiar with long-term care. So Thank you for that. And then it looks like we've got a lot of interest in walk cares, so glad to hear that, as well as all of our other topics. I am going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I will hand it over to Susan to begin our panelist remarks.
Thank you, Kristen. So for most of us in this meeting, it's not a question of if we're going to need long-term supports and services someday, but when we're going to need it. As Kristen mentioned, about 70% of people will need it, but the vast majority of folks aren't going to be able to afford it. As this slide shows, average senior retirement savings are around $148,000, whereas the average lifetime cost of long-term supports and services is much, much greater. So Medicare does not cover long-term supports and services. So there's typically a path to Medicaid, which is the program once a person becomes impoverished. So typically a person will present with a need, their family member steps in, and over time there can be burnout, or the needs may just become too great for them to handle. So people may pay privately for what they need and go into more expensive settings to get that, and eventually exhaust their savings and become impoverished to qualify for Medicaid. So in all of this, next slide, please. In all of this, the unpaid caregivers really shoulder the burden. So there are over 850,000 unpaid caregivers in Washington State. And the work that they do is valued at almost $11 billion. Whoops. So in addition to the stresses, they may have a loss of earning potential, decrease their saving ability for retirement themselves, impact providing their own children's needs, and have increased health costs because of the stress and burdens on their own health. And if too many caregivers burn out, it's going to increase the need for paid workers. And as we'll talk about later, there is a crisis of not enough paid workers. So it makes these family caregivers even more important. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that we can support family caregivers, we use an evidence-based assessment tool called TCare. And so it begins with screening and assessment, and it looks at different types of stresses, burdens, and also uplifts, because there is a positive side to family caregiving as well. But it seeks to understand how people are feeling about their role and the particular types of stress they might be feeling. And then the evidence-based algorithm runs, and it suggests these are things that could help. And so there's a consultation and planning with the individual. The caregiver is the client in this model. Service delivery happens, and then there's a reassessment check-in at 6 months, and the cycle goes on. But that's really to provide the right service at the right time for what that caregiver needs. Next slide, please. So the types of services that are current programs that serve family caregivers. So we've got an 1115 Medicaid program, one called Tailored Supports for Older Adults, the other Medicaid Alternative Care. These are both based on Family Caregiver Support Program, which you can access through your local area agency on aging. And the services that are provided range to caregiver assistance services that can provide respite and other types of replacement care services, training and education for the caregiver to help them with gaining skills and knowledge on how to care for the recipient and themselves, specialized medical equipment and supplies to help provide the care. A lot of things are needed, and they can add up. incontinence supplies, bathroom equipment, and so forth. And health maintenance and therapy supports. It may even be something like massage therapy for the caregiver, or other, and powerful tools for caregiving is a great training program. These are all things that could be purchased with your WACARES benefit in the future and help stretch your budget, because these are low-cost services that can avoid higher cost services later on. Next slide, please. So with these services and the evidence-based assessment, we found that there was improvement. Typically, we would expect caregivers to get more stressed over time and have decrease in how they feel about their stresses. But getting the right services helped caregivers to maintain their desire to keep on supporting their loved one, and even lowered spousal caregivers' intention to place. Next slide, please. So another way that we support caregivers is through the Dementia Action Collaborative. A large portion of family caregivers are caring for people with dementia, various types of dementia. So just wanted to point out that we have a state plan. We're just about to renew it in the coming year. And one of the best things that we've produced, or that I like, Nick, if we look at the next slide, I want to point out to you that we have a dementia roadmap guide for family caregivers, and you can Google just the name of it, and it's so popular that it comes up pretty quickly. So I would point you in this direction. It's been borrowed by a number of states, and even countries have borrowed it and retooled it for their own state. Next slide, please. So another way that we support family caregivers is through, in Washington State, is legislation that provides paid family medical leave. And so this is a fairly new legislation. It passed in 2017, and there's a small deduction out of all workers' wages to pay for this benefit. So up to 12 weeks to care for a family member with serious health conditions. This is very helpful because one of those burdens on family caregivers is loss of income. Another piece of legislation is the CARE Act, where hospitals are required to include the family caregiver identified by the patient when they're doing discharge planning. So that's another way that we support family caregivers. Next slide, please. And then we also, since 1981, we have paid family members to be caregivers. We find that because of the nature of caregiving, that most individuals want to have someone known to them and trusted in providing intimate kinds of care. So about 73% of our workforce do identify as family members. And they receive the same training and certification. Most family members do. Parent providers of their adult children aren't required to take as much, but it's available in 11 languages, and their paid family members get the same rate of scale as non-family members. So those are some additional ways that we support caregiving in Washington State and family caregivers. Because if someone has to give up their job, then that is going to be a burden for them if they can't be paid. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to the next speaker.
All right, thank you, Susan. Christine, you are up.
Thank you, Susan. So my team is working to try and address the workforce challenges, because we do need more caregivers, and we're trying to grow the workforce in several different areas and reach out and do recruitment and retention efforts, and really just kind of educate the public on what these roles are and what caregiving is, and what you need to do this work, because it really is a calling, I guess, if you will. Next slide, please. So one of the things we're doing is we're trying to figure out, if there is ways to create career advancement opportunities for people that want to go into the career caregiving field. And, there's traditional ones and there's ones that aren't as traditional. But we also talk about, testing and training and certification. This is specific to the home care aid population, which Danny on our panel is an individual provider. So the base pay, hey Danny, starts out if you're if you are an individual provider and you're working in home to provide care for someone, the pay is pretty good, $17.89 to $20.30 an hour. And there's other, built-in increases for different certifications and credentials and how long you've been a provider. And then we have the content and testing of these trainings for home care aid is available in 13 languages. So that's pretty awesome too. Next, please. And this one just kind of gives you an idea of what the training programs are, what we're doing in terms of trying to retain the workforce, so keeping them in the field, and then what efforts we're doing for marketing and outreach. Next slide, please. So one of the exciting things we're doing is we're trying to attract younger people to this workforce. And we have a high school home care aid program that we've been working on. And we finally got our first high school pilot program at Everett High School. We had 16 students who decided to then go on to get certified of the 21 that took these courses. They were given high school credit. So you have the option of, you can get your high school credit and you can go on if you're 18 and start working as a caregiver once you've received your certification. So I've been working with a testing company, and all of the high school students that moved on for certification are scheduled this month to take a test, which is awesome. So we're waiting to see how that goes. We've got a couple other high schools that are interested as well. And I think the Everett High School is going to be offering it again in the spring. So they're going to continue it because it was so successful. So this really will be great for a lot of different areas. We're also looking at hopefully getting tribes, the different tribal nations, to also offer this course because they care for their elders. And so another training entity is the Adult Family Home Training Network. They specifically work with adult family homes who have people that are interested in working in that setting. And they fill out an application to get a scholarship, basically to get training. They have all kinds of different trainings available there. They have specialty mental health and dementia training. If you want to maybe go in for nursing assistant certified training, they also have that, and they do a lot of workshops and marketing around that. They just did their Adult Family Home Council, was the 28th and 29th, I think. And then we have community instructors out there that we approve in my unit who teach all kinds of courses, continued education courses, as well as the basic training 70 for home care aides. And the SEIU Union 775, the training partnership. So they offer, of course, training too, all over the state. And then we're also working on pathways to career advancement. So next slide, please. So the workforce retention efforts, when we talk about retention, we want to make sure that people are happy where they're working, especially if they're working for a supervisor who may not supervise as well as they could. So we're looking at creating a course for supervisors to give them better skills in doing leadership and recognizing the workforce that they have working for them. So part of this toolkit that we're developing talks about the recognition that caregivers deserve, because the work they do is frontline and really important. I think they're the first person in their healthcare team that really knows what's going on with all the individuals they care for. And then well-being, trying to balance, because it is stressful, trying to balance your work life with, well-being, taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself, because we do need breaks. And communication, because a lot of supervisors may not know how to communicate effectively with the different people that are drawn to this work. And that's in any job you've probably ever had, right? You've noticed some people are better than others. Onboarding is more about, looking for the right type of individuals for the work. And then when you bring them on, not just leaving them alone to go figure it out, right? So you really want to mentor them and help coach them and maybe, connect them with somebody who they could shadow in the work that they're doing. And then navigating through all the different processes that are involved. And we also have train the trainer courses too. Next slide, please. So we created a web page. The website is Washington Care Careers website. And this one really is to get people interested in this field and then to look at the different areas they can work in. Because I think a lot of people don't know what this work is. And, when they say IPs and providers and, what settings can you work in and what are those settings like? Some people may want to work in a home like Danny. Others may want to work in an assisted living facility where there's a lot of people that they care for. Some may want to work in, a 6-bed adult family home. And some may want to be a nursing assistant certified. So this webpage really gives you information on what that looks like. It has a little quiz to see if you have the heart for the work and if it's a good fit for you, and kind of describes the process and what to expect. And then we also have some resources on there on where you can look for work and where the different locations are that teach these courses in different languages, which is really helpful too. We've been doing a caregiver video project. So we've got 2 now. One is completed, and it's really just interviewing people who do this work, who either are still, depending on where they are in their career, different people want to keep being a home care aide because that's what calls to them and speaks to their heart, and they just do that forever. Others do that and then maybe move into a community living situation and become an administrator or run an adult family home. So there's other people that we're looking for success stories just to give people an idea of why people do this work and why it's important. We've got our second video that's almost complete now, and then we're going to eventually put them up onto this website. We do outreach at different career fairs and resource fairs and conferences. We have a community instructor campaign where we're trying to reach out to get more community instructors in the areas where we don't have training courses that are offered. And we're also working with the testing entity too to see if we can get more test locations so people don't have to travel so far to take their exam. We've working with all kinds of associations, looking at, military spouses and veterans to see if they're interested in this work, because the military people move around so much and their spouses have to go with them. So they're always looking for work typically. So if you get a chance, check out the web page. And then we've got a team that's pretty small, but we're trying to work on expanding it. And considering there's 5 of us, we're doing as much work as we can across the state to get the word out on what this is and do some marketing. We did some ads too on Pandora and YouTube, which maybe you have seen, about caregivers. So I think that's the last slide, isn't it?
That is.
It is. All right. So not bad. I still have 7 minutes.
All right, Danny, we will hand it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I am Danny Rice, and I am an IP. I've actually been an IP for 15 years. I started when I was age 19. And while also being an IP, I've also held various other caregiving jobs. So I have also been an unpaid family provider, as well as an agency provider. And I have also worked as a private pay caregiver for a family. And I also helped them set up their entire caregiving support system for their family while I was there. I've also been the recipient of needing a caregiver. About 4 years ago, I suffered a spinal cord injury and became a wheelchair user. So I actually had a caregiver for some time, and also had an unpaid family provider that assisted me during that time. Caregiving is absolutely, hands down, one of the most rewarding jobs that you can have, in my opinion. It's one of the only jobs where you know that when you go to work every single day, you're making a difference in someone's life. that there are certain tasks that they simply couldn't do without you. And so it has been certainly a calling on my heart ever since I first began. It's also been a blessing because as an IP, I get the opportunity to set my own hours with my clients. I don't have a supervisor who says, you know, I need you on night shift. Instead, I work directly with my clients to figure out a schedule that works for both them and myself. When I first started being an IP, the job was literally pitched to me by my client's social worker as, how'd you like to be able to go to school and earn money and make a living while doing that? Because if you would, I think I've got a great job that works around school schedules. When at the time I attended community college full-time, and I also was a caregiver full-time. And because of the ability to schedule my hours around my life and my client's life, it worked out perfectly. 1 month of working for my clients would actually pay for 1/4 of school, and I would pay out of pocket for community college at that time. And at the time, 15 years ago, I was only earning $9 an hour. So if you saw that base pay right now, we're earning about double that starting wage. As a new mom, I also found my job easily to work into my life, a lot easier than, say, some of my other mom friends who worked at a retail store or anywhere else in the industry where your hours are basically, you're told what shifts you work. Additionally, the healthcare benefits of being a caregiver who works more than 80 hours a month has been extremely helpful, especially when I sustained my spinal cord injury 4 years ago. My health insurance kicked in and was able to pay that over the top $1 million cost for surgeries that otherwise I would have been out of pocket and I would have had to claim bankruptcy. So I'm very grateful to SEIU 775 providing those benefits for caregivers. That said, like all other jobs, caregiving does have some challenges. It's easy to forget about self-care when you are a caregiver, especially when your job is to provide care for other people. The other people that you work with tend to be on your mind all the time because that's your job. Unfortunately, this can lead to burnout and negative mental health consequences like anxiety, depression, so on, forgetting that you're important. It can also be difficult to maintain a healthy work-life balance, especially if you're the person who's setting your own hours with your client. I've found that it's really easy to take on too many tasks or too many hours with clients because we care so much. And that tends to leave us with very little love and energy for our own families when we get home. So maintaining that work-life balance is extremely difficult. It can be difficult to remember that taking care of yourself means that you will be there and be able to take care of your clients much better if you are also healthy and mentally healthy as well. But common occurrence of jobs where your job is an outward focus on others, hospitality jobs, and especially something as important as caregiving and making sure that people's life tasks are done. Luckily, to help prevent that burnout, SEIU 775 Benefits Group has been ensuring that Ginger, a program that is an app, is an option to our members. So Ginger IO is both a texting and a video call, emotional support, and as well as life coaching app. And it's at low cost to members. So that is one option. Additionally, we also find a lot of misconceptions around caregiving about who we are and what we do as caregivers. In general, the public has a perception that a caregiver is someone that is similar job level to a housekeeper or a babysitter. We run into a lot of misconceptions that caregivers tend to be low educated or not very high requirements to get the job. We also tend to run into the perception that caregivers are not really healthcare workers, not really healthcare professionals like a nurse, say, or a CNA. We run into these stereotypes and assumptions at an all too alarming rate from both our clients' families, the general public, and even the legislators who we have to work with in order to advocate for better wages and benefits. For instance, when the pandemic first began, Washington State rolled out this massive, we'll pay for your PPE and give you hazard pay for all healthcare workers. Guess who was left out of that? Caregivers. Caregivers, being that frontline worker, are often left out of those things, but that's why we have a union, and that's why we have leaders and we have advocates that ensure that we are actually included, and we're trying to change the public perception that caregivers are actually healthcare workers. We are those frontline workers. In reality, I hold a bachelor's degree and graduated summa cum laude and actually turned down a master's degree program. And a lot of caregivers that I know have similar educational experiences. We simply enjoy caregiving and find it very fulfilling and love it far too much. Additionally, Washington State has yearly certification and continuing education requirements that we have to hold as caregivers. So nobody that is a caregiver is ever uneducated in any way. It's not really a surprise that we fight these misconceptions publicly when you think about history. Caregiving was really born out of servants and slavery and was really looked down upon by the upper class. It was always the lower class that did these jobs, always the people of color, always women. So at the same time that we have brought caregiving a long, long ways in the public perception of gaining respect, we also have to fight that old sexism, classism, and racism that sometimes still exists, even if we don't realize it. Which leads me to the very most rewarding part of being a caregiver. Washington Caregivers, thanks to a lot of leaders and advocates, actually have the best home care contract in the country when you're talking about wages and benefits and retirement. We still have a long ways to go, but IPs now actually make double the wage starting than when I first started 15 years ago. And I'm not even all that old, right? Before it was $9 an hour, and now we're making at least double that, and hopefully even more when this next contract rolls out. I know that as I advocate for better wages and benefits, I know that I'm literally making a difference for future caregivers, for future families that need to utilize caregivers, that their caregivers will be respected and paid well, thus they will get better care for their loved ones. Lastly, it can be really overwhelming and isolating, especially as a rural caregiver, something that I face a lot in Washington. I end up running into a lot of people in my own community that are first approaching the time when their loved one needs care. Maybe it's a mom or a dad, a pillar in the community that you've known forever, and they're just starting to need care. It's happening more and more frequently because older people are becoming a larger part of our population as baby boomers age. And unfortunately, there aren't enough caregivers at the moment. Luckily, I've found a great resource that helps combat that. So before this resource was available, I actually had to help someone set up their private pay caregiving, essentially business, for their loved one. Now there's a resource called Carina. Carina is a website service that can help match caregivers with new clients and vice versa. Most importantly, for those who may not qualify for caregiving through Medicaid, which we all know, a lot of people unfortunately don't qualify like we would assume we do, which is where Washington Cares comes in. But this service, Carina, also can be used to match private pay clients with caregivers. So it's a resource for us all. Thank you for your time.
All right. I'm just gonna, one moment, go ahead and share the screen again so that we can talk a little bit about the Walk Cares Fund. So Walk Cares is a universal long-term care program in Washington State. It is an earned benefit, which means that you contribute for a certain number of years in order to qualify for benefits. Walk Cares is self-funded from worker contributions, and you only pay in while you're working. If you have some kind of an interruption in your employment, you don't have to pay while you are unemployed. And once you retire, you are done contributing to the fund. Everyone under Walk Cares is covered at the same rate, regardless of any pre-existing conditions you might have, unlike private long-term care insurance. And the program reduces the need to raise taxes to pay for Medicaid long-term care costs as the population ages. Overall, it is a more efficient and effective way to pay for long-term care by making affordable contributions across our careers. And contributions to the program will begin July 2023, and benefits will become available in July 2026. And so everyone who is a W-2 worker in the state contributes to Walk Cares Fund, with a few notable exceptions. Federal employees are not included in the program, and employees of tribes are only included if the tribe has opted into the program. And then folks who are self-employed are able to opt in as well if they would like to contribute and earn the same benefits as other Washington workers. The premiums from those contributions go into a dedicated trust fund that is used only for this program. And you can see over on the far right here that the typical Washington income is right about $52,000 a year, and typical contribution from that income would be just about $300 a year. Certain workers are able to apply for an exemption, and workers who live out of state, temporary workers with a non-immigrant visa, and spouses of active duty military are all folks who are able to apply for an exemption based on their criteria continuing to be true. So if you're someone who lives out of state who has an exemption for that reason, if you move into the state, then your exemption will end and you will begin contributing to the fund. And then we have two that are permanent. So workers who are veterans with a service-connected disability rating of 70% or higher. This is also a permanent exemption, and it's because these folks have some coverage of nursing home care through the VA. And then finally, workers who had private long-term care insurance before November 2021 are also exempted from the program. If they apply, all of these are applications that you can fill out through ESD. So this is what those contributions look like over the course of your career. You can see that the typical Washington income is right about at that level in green in the middle. And so that is a $50,000 a year annual salary. That's $290 each year for a total of $8,700 over 30 years. And then we will qualify for coverage after contributing for a certain number of years. So everyone who works more than 500 hours per year is earning benefits through the Walk Cares Fund. So that's right about 10 hours a week. So folks who work part-time are earning this benefit. If you work part of the year, then you're earning this benefit as long as you hit that 500-hour mark. And there are three different pathways that you can use to qualify for benefits. So the first one is really designed to help workers who have not been able to contribute for long enough to qualify through one of the other pathways, but do have a care need either at some point during their career or at some point soon after they stop working. So anyone who has contributed 3 of the last 6 years at the time that they have a care need, at the time they apply for benefits, has access to the full Walk Cares benefit of $36,500. Then the next pathway is lifetime access to the full benefit. So this is for workers who contribute for a total of 10 years without a break of 5 or more consecutive years. And most Washingtonians are going to qualify for WACARES Fund through this pathway. And then finally, we have a new pathway established in legislative session this year that is new for near retirees. So this is specifically for folks who were born before 1968, who are unlikely to be able to reach that full 10 years before they retire, but who want to make sure have access to a permanent benefit. So those folks get 10% of the benefit amount for each year worked. So if you work for 3 years, you'll have access to 30% of the full benefit amount. And it is worth noting that people born before 1968 are also able to qualify through the other pathways. This is just to make sure that if you don't qualify one of the other ways, that you still are able to access a partial benefit. And the WACARES benefit is flexible. It is really designed to help people age in place in their homes as long as possible. That's what almost all of us want to do and what most of us are able to do as long as we have the right supports in place. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. So that could mean something like in-home professional care, but it could also include things like home modifications that make your house safer for you to live in, and assistive technology for things like medication reminders or fall detection that can help with some care needs that you might otherwise have. And WACARES is really structured to support family caregivers. You can choose someone who would otherwise be caring for you on an unpaid basis to get training and to be paid. And under WACARES, this can even include a spouse. So many folks who need care say that they don't want to be a burden on their loved ones, and WACARES can really help lessen that impact on family caregivers by paying them for their time or making sure that they can get access to other support services like respite care so that they have a little bit of a break and are able to take some time for themselves. You can also use the WACARES benefit in other settings like nursing homes and facilities. So there's just a wide range of benefits that are available to you through WACARES. In order to be able to use your WACARES benefit, you must need help with 3 activities of daily living like bathing, dressing, eating, and medication management. And at this point in time, you are also need to live in Washington State when you need care. So that concludes our WACARES section. We are going to move into audience Q&A, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share so that we can see everyone's faces. So let's take a look at our Q&A. I know we got one question that is about whether we have a list of online programs available in Spanish. Maybe Christine, if you could just give us a quick update on or a quick reminder of where people can go for finding more information on those training programs you mentioned.
We have we have a web page that you can look at, the WACAREScareers.org, and you can go to the resource page and take a look at where the community instructors are and what languages they teach in. We also have an ALTA training page that talks about the different trainings that are available, and in the languages it provides information about that too. I can look that up and maybe put it in the chat.
That would be great.
And I do know there's one training company that's working on a Spanish version for the home care aid course, and they are completely online. I assume this course will be as well. So that's something to look for as well coming down. It'll take a while, but they're working on it, which is exciting.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, I was going to add too that, you know, Danny knows this too, the training partnership offers courses in different languages too. You just need to find the instructor and the course that you want to take through them if you're interested in going that route.
All right, great. Now we've got a few questions from folks on WACARES that we'll go ahead and address. We've got someone asking if the full benefit is prorated based on years of contribution. No, it is not. So once you qualify through one of those 3 pathways that we talked about, you have access to your benefit amount, and it is for folks who do either the 3 of the last 6 years at the time you apply for benefits path, or the 10 years pathway. Both of those are access to the full benefit amount, which is $36,500. And then the near retirees, it's that who qualify for a partial benefit, it's that 10% of each of the benefit amount for each year that you work and earn benefits. And, you know, we get a lot of folks who ask about how far that benefit goes. And really, I think it's important to acknowledge that Walk Cares is not going to take care of all of the costs for everyone who needs care, but hopefully it will be a little bit of breathing room for everyone. For folks who have a care need that comes out of nowhere, it should give your family to plan for what kinds of needs you might have in the future, and will help us all hopefully stay in our homes longer the way that we all want to. Next, let's see, question. Is the qualification for 3 activities of daily living at full assistance, or will partial assistance qualify? We don't have details yet on what exactly that's going to look like. We'll have more information as it gets closer to benefits becoming available, what you will need to do to be eligible for benefits. And that also goes for, we had a question about assessment of ADL needs. At this point, it doesn't sound like that's going to be necessary, but there will be a process where DSHS will check in with folks who apply for benefits and find out what their needs look like. And we've got someone asking, can employees opt out of Walk Cares Fund if they're retiring in 2 years? The answer to that one is the only exemptions that are allowed for Walk Cares Fund are the ones that we talked about. So if you meet one of those other qualifications, then you're able to apply for an exemption. Otherwise, no. But if you are retiring in 2 years, then you will earn that near retiree partial benefits. You'll earn 20% of the full benefit amount for the years that you contribute. And then we also had someone asking if someone just moved to Washington this year, is there any way to get an exemption if you had a private long-term care plan that is obtained after that date of November 1st, 2021? No, at this point, the private insurance exemption is only for folks who got their private plan on or before November 1st, 2021. And we've got some folks asking, how do family caregivers get paid currently from Walk Cares Fund? And Walk Cares Fund is not yet at the point where we're providing benefits. That won't happen until July 2026. So right now, the way that family caregivers get paid is through Medicaid. Maybe, Susan, would you be able to give a little refresher on that from your remarks?
Sure. So in our Medicaid programs, if the care receiver qualifies for Medicaid long-term supports and services, then, and they select a family caregiver who's not their spouse, or parents of minor children can't be paid, but others can be paid if they pass a background check and then start working on the training, they can be paid.
All right, great. And then we've got someone asking for Walk Cares, what happens if you contribute for a couple of years, for example, by your W-2 and then become self-employed, and whether you benefit from the 2 years of contribution. So you would, if you become self-employed, you're able to then opt in and continue to pay into the fund to be able to get Walk Cares Fund benefits and to be able to continue earning those years. Otherwise, if you don't meet any of the qualification pathways, then no, you will not qualify for Walk Cares Fund benefits. And we also had someone asking, would both spouses in a household who have contributed to the fund, have contributed the required number of years, qualify? And the answer is yes. So part of what's great about being able to pay family caregivers is that that money also then stays in the household, so that you're able to not just get paid for your time, but you're able to use that money for other household needs. So yes, the answer to that one is yes. And someone's asking to clarify, a person can't become an IP and get paid to care for their spouse. Susan, can you maybe address that for the Medicaid side?
Sure. Right now, under current policy in Washington State, we pay a legally responsible adult to care for someone, and legally responsible would be a spouse or a parent of a minor child.
All right, thank you. And then, yeah, like we mentioned under WACARES, you'll be able to, as a spouse, be paid to be a family caregiver. So it's one difference between the two programs. We've also got someone here asking, when will my employees who live and work outside of Washington be able to opt out of the program? If you work outside of Washington, then you don't contribute to WACARES fund. But if you work in Washington and live somewhere else, then you will be able to apply for an exemption starting January of next year. And you can keep an eye on the WACARES Fund website for that information and sign up for our updates for our mailing list to be notified when that information becomes available. Okay. Let's see. A question for, I know Danny, you had mentioned that this was particularly difficult in a rural setting. I would be interested in hearing from the panel about what this looks like in a rural setting, what the complications are for this issue, for the issue of either family caregiver support or professional caregivers.
Rural settings now, there are challenges that it is a caregiver who can opt to pay them, and I assume we're talking others in the future. You can pay them through that. You can also purchase other services, equipment, things that we've looked at that can support you in staying in the home. Home care agencies are another option. So you can see if a home care agency might serve your rural area and have a caregiver. So that's another option.
Great. Go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to add that with the growing amount of baby boomers that are aging, rural communities tend to also be older communities. And so when you have less younger people with the ability to be a caregiver, that does create a problem. But one of the resources that is definitely available and I would look into is definitely that Karina program that helps match caregivers with clients. It's kind of like social media for caregivers and clients. You basically create a page, what you're looking for, and hopefully you find a match. Where it's a problem that we're working on with boosting the benefits and so on for being a caregiver, and hopefully enticing a lot more of the younger generation to be caregivers. But it's definitely one that we are keeping an eye on and will hopefully improve over years.
Great, thank you. A couple other questions from the chat. We have someone asking, can we for care through a home care agency? Yes, that is one of the care settings that you'll be able to get. We've also got someone asking about whether cognitive decline is a trigger for WACARES fund, like for long-term care insurance. Rather than having those kinds of triggers, really what we're looking at is for folks needing help with activities of daily living. So that's where we mentioned, you need help with 3 activities of daily living in order to qualify for benefits, in addition to having met the contribution requirements. We've also got someone asking to be changes to the exemptions, and that is a question at this point. There are not additional opportunities for private insurance exemptions, but if you would like to see that change, you can contact your legislators. Okay, we've only got a few minutes remaining. Before we close out, I know we have talked about where folks can find more resources if they want to become a professional caregiver. I am interested in hearing, we talked a little bit about some of the programs that are available, but what's the first step for a family caregiver if they're looking for some of those resources? What's the best way that they can get connected and get information?
So family caregivers can reach out to their local area agency on aging, and they can do options counseling, tell you about all the programs that might be available to your loved one and to yourself. So that would be my recommendation for your first step.
Right, great. Okay. Is there anything else that panelists think it's important for folks to be aware of on this issue? Any other points that you want to make before we close out?
I just want to add that I did put the webpage for ALTA for training in the different languages and whatnot, and information about home care aides into the chat. And I put the WA Care Careers webpage address in there as well for people to check it out.
Fantastic, thank you. And for anybody who is interested in getting more information, if you check the WA Cares Fund website later on after the webinar is over, we will have a copy of the recording, we'll have a copy of the slides, and we can make sure that we have these links to the sites that have been mentioned, where folks can get more resources and learn more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I just put a link into Community Living Connections, which is a website that can connect you with your local area agency on aging.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. If you're interested in getting that recording or the resources that we've been talking about here, you can visit the WA Cares Fund website at wacaresfund.wa.gov. You can also, if you have any more questions about the program, you can contact us at waccaresfund@dshs.wa.gov or at 1-844-CARE4WA. We will be doing another webinar later this month on long-term care planning for younger workers. And if you'd like more info on that when it becomes available, please make sure to sign up for our email list on the WA Cares website. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you so much to our panel for all of the information that they shared, and we will see you all later this month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.